Hey everyone, Todd Morgano here from Zero.G.Strategy, and today I want to talk about the essentials of how to better prepare your organization to handle an issue or a crisis when one pops up, and today, unfortunately, they're popping up all too frequently. So let's start out with a question for you. If you had an issue or crisis arise tomorrow, how well would you handle it? Be honest with yourself. You can do so by asking yourself these questions, and there's a few of them. First of all, do you have a plan or a structure in place that would guide how you triage an issue? And where is that plan exactly? And is it the right plan for what might arise? Would you have access to that plan if offices were shut down or access to your servers went down? Should it even be a written plan, or should it be more of an organizational structure? If there's already an established team developed, that's great, but do you have one of those? And could they be immediately notified and sent into action no matter where they are in the world? Now ask yourself, is this the right team if you do have one? Do they know their responsibilities? Do they have the authority to make decisions? Has your team and structure, or the plan you have in place, has it been pressure tested? In other words, do you know it'll work if you had to enact it? These are a lot of questions, I get it. But if you don't have good answers to them, you're putting your organization at risk. Because here's the thing. In today's volatile environment, it's not a matter of if an issue will land in your lap, it's when. I've been working with companies for decades to build or shore up their crisis response capabilities and help them manage high-stakes issues. And I can tell you, two things always bear out. One, the organizations that fare the best are those that are the most prepared. The absolute worst time to figure out what to do when an issue or crisis arises is during the issue or crisis. You simply won't have time. Things move way too fast. If you're forced to figure it out in the moment, you're at a huge disadvantage, and I promise you it'll be painful, and the outcome likely won't be ideal. It could even be disastrous. Some companies spend decades building stellar reputations that are washed away in a mere 48 hours because they get caught flat-footed and mismanage an issue. Second point I want to make, it's almost never the crisis itself that damages the organization. Most of the damage comes from the way they handle it. People will often understand, and sometimes they'll even forgive companies when bad things happen. There are even instances where a well-handled issue leads to more trust in the organization afterwards. But what people won't forget or forgive is when a company behaves or performs poorly during a crisis. If they're slow to respond, if they come across as callous or make decisions or say things privately or publicly that exacerbate the situation, if they blame others, allow themselves to speculate on unverified information, if they're insensitive to the people affected by the issue, if they say too little or too much at the wrong times, and worst of all, if they become defensive, irritated by, or even dismissive of any criticism they might face. Any or all of that can inflict a deeper level of damage and mistrust than the actual crisis itself. So the big question then is, how do you make sure you're well prepared? Well, first, if you don't already have one, I would highly recommend establishing a crisis team. And every organization is different, but here are the kinds of people who should generally be on that team. And it should be a very tight group. The balance you want to strike is the fewest people possible without leaving out anyone who's critical to representing a core business function. Now, one of the key members of this group, obviously, will be your CEO, your president, your owner, whoever's in charge of your business. And maybe for you, that's one person, or maybe it's a few, if decision-making is collaborative in your company. So you also need someone, or maybe several people, if necessary, from operations. People who know what critical functions are necessary to keep the business running, people with knowledge of your logistics, information systems, facilities, business processes. These people who have the authority to make decisions about how to operate and maybe even shut down certain business functions in the event of a disruption. And for larger organizations, you're also going to want to include your HR lead, your legal counsel, and of course, your communications lead. Every organization's team is going to look slightly different, and some will necessarily be larger or smaller. But these are the kinds of folks that should be on the team. And once the group's established, it's critical that you have a way to assemble them quickly, otherwise they're no good to you. So with one push of a button, you should be able to get a hold of all these folks through an alert that directs them to join a pre-selected, secure phone or video line where that team can quickly assemble and triage an event. You want to make sure the right people can be brought together regardless of where they are, because crises, as we all know, often hit at very inconvenient times well beyond business hours. Well, now when this team is assembled, they can begin to quickly assess the situation. And I will tell you, sorting out facts from conjecture is going to be one of the biggest challenges you have, because a lot of information washes over you in a crisis, especially in those first 24 hours. Much of what you think you know in those early stages will be proven false or inaccurate later. So be very careful not to get out over your skis and start talking about things you're not certain of. Getting together quickly allows your team to get a jump on assessing what's true and not true, and to quickly understand the potential impact to the business, to employees, also to customers, clients, other constituents you may have. And you want to do that in as close to real time as possible. It's very important because in a crisis, sometimes every minute counts. So this team that you have now will also contribute to creating any reactive or proactive communications that the communications lead will draft and craft. So message development and decisions about what to say when, that's a whole subcategory that I'll go into another time. But my advice around it here, just generally, is that it's always better to prepare the communications you might need, even if you don't end up using them or use them reactively at some point down the line. Having them at the ready, tremendous advantage. And if you never have to use them, well, think of it as insurance. Now, one more general note before we leave the subject of communications. Regardless of your situation, your communications during an issue or crisis should be clear, concise, factual, and, very importantly, focused on the actions you're taking to investigate and address the issue. Because sometimes in the beginning, you can't say much, but what you can say is what you're doing to address the situation. People are going to judge you. They're going to look to see if you're on top of it, if you're a responsible, compassionate organization that does the right thing, or whether you're shirking your responsibilities or fumbling around in the dark. And the perception you forge while handling issues tells people an awful lot about the kind of company you are, and it can build or erode trust going into the future. So you're going to want to build and establish this live feedback channel as well. This is really important. It's going to help you assess how the situation is unfolding in real time. So ask yourself, who on the ground or at the epicenter of the issue can send information your way to keep you abreast of developments? Maybe it's your salespeople who are getting questions from customers, your reception desk, people in the field, in your stores, at your work sites. What's the chatter on social? Do you already have a way to monitor where people might start to comment on what's happening to you? And again, having those monitoring and feedback channels up and running before an issue hits is imperative. It's also critical to identify all of the constituents you might need to communicate with in an emergency long before the emergency hits. So list them out: employees, board members if you have them, customers for sure, clients, vendors and suppliers, maybe government or regulatory agencies if that's your world, other influencers. What you want to do is put them on a list or in a database that you can easily access remotely, get their contacts down, and also define the best ways to reach them. And it'll be different for different groups of people. Some might require a personal phone call. Others could be a text or an email. And also ask yourself who in your organization has that relationship with that person and is the best person to make that contact. This should all be set up in advance. And again, decisions can be made later about whether or when to contact any of these folks. But if you need to, and you can't quickly locate how to get in touch with them, you're going to burn a lot of time and effort that'll be in short supply. And if you can't communicate with people who might need to hear from you during an issue, you're going to create a lot of disruption and unnecessary angst, and maybe even lose some trust or business in the process. So this is just the tip of the iceberg. I know it sounds like a lot to consider, but if you want to know more about best practices when managing issues, or if you want to participate in one of my exercises where I put your crisis response team through the processes to identify the strengths and weaknesses and shore up gaps, drop me a note. And also, look for some deeper virtual training courses on this subject that I'll be offering in the coming months. And as always, thanks for spending some time with me, and reach out if you have questions.